Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into the Fantasy Roundup. I'm your host, Spencer the Guru Urquhart. Alongside me is Gabe Henderson. We are live from two different states. Gabe's in Texas, but he still rocks with us here on the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We're live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. On Tuesdays, we have our Fantasy Roundup show because, as y'all know, during the season, that's a waiver wire day. But till then, we've got some more speculation to do. You ready to get into this thing with all this running back drama?
Absolutely, and I'd just like to note, Spencer, we do have Bayous here in Houston. So still an appropriately named group.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, still down south. Yeah, still in this down south. Yeah, it's not like you're out in New York or something. Well, you were a few weeks ago, but you're back here now. Yeah, so, but anyway, yeah, we're brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook, official odds partner of bet.nola.com. We've got a packed show for y'all. We're going to react to all the free agent running back signings that went down yesterday, as well as a stock report. We're going to go over which players we feel are trending up and trending down heading into fantasy football drafts. I know a lot of you guys have y'all's drafts this weekend and the next and the weekend after. These next few weekends are draft season. It's hot and heavy. And speaking of draft season, the Bayou Bets Listener League will return. We will have our fantasy football Bayou Bets Fantasy Roundup League. We're hoping for 12 teams this year. Last year was 10 teams. Going to hope to up it to 12 this year. 12-team PPR. Comment now if you want in to get your spot early. And if we get, over 12, we're going to have to do a drawing. But if we get, right at 10, as me and Gabe will be participating, of course. But if you want to try to get one of the 10 spots, make sure to let us know. Comment, hit us up on Instagram or Twitter, email us, however you want to do it, to get one of those coveted spots, because there will be a prize once again from our partners at Caesars. This year, it will be Saints-Falcons tickets. Last year was Saints-Panthers. Week 18, the only week we can do it because, any week prior to that, fantasy season is still going on. So the winner will get a pair of tickets to the Saints-Falcons final regular season home game at the Caesars Superdome. So make sure to comment and let us know if you want in on that. Listener League, going to get to compete against myself and Gabe. And I go by the Guru, so if you want to dethrone my Guru title, then try and go for it. I got to admit, last year it was a really tough league. I got off to a slow start, and then our guy Bucktown Rebel ended up taking the title. I made the playoffs, though. Made a nice comeback, but couldn't quite pull off the title. And good afternoon to you too, Jerry. Good timing, because we're about to get into some Saints news here as we get into our fantasy headlines. Kendre Miller suffered a sprained knee in the preseason. Pretty much the only injury of note for the New Orleans Saints. And as a result, the Saints have signed a local product in Darrell Williams, John E. Red alum, LSU alum. Darrell Williams had a pretty solid NFL career up to this point. Had some nice years with the Chiefs. Hadn't done much after that. But in 2021, as we brought up yesterday on Bayou Bets with Jim Daria, Darrell couldn't catch passes. He caught over 40 passes in 2021, and that's what the Saints are going to need him to do at the start of this season, because without Alvin Kamara for 3 weeks, going to need a third down back. And Kendre Miller probably also will be out or limited. So it'll be the Williams and Williams show. Jamal and Darrell splitting time there. Should be a solid backfield to start. And then the Jets made some big moves. Or one big move is that, Dalvin Cook. They brought in Dalvin Cook. They signed him 1-year deal, finally agreed to that deal. And they're looking good because Breece Hall now back at practice, probably going to still be going with Dalvin, I would think, since he's the veteran early on. But, hey, Breece Hall back. We'll have more on Breece Hall in a minute. But, yeah, Dalvin Cook to New York, big news there. And then the Patriots making a move as well. Ezekiel Elliott finally found a home. He's headed to New England on a 1-year deal. Probably won't be super fantasy relevant, but we'll give our thoughts on him as well. And then some quarterback news. We got a starting quarterback named Anthony Richardson, week 1 starter for the Indianapolis Colts. I know Gabe will have more on him later with our stock reports, but before we get to that, let's get to our running back free agent frenzy thoughts. And I guess we'll start with Dalvin Cook, man. I mean, going to the Jets, I know a lot of people are probably thinking, Breece Hall, it's not a good landing spot, but I'm still concerned about Breece Hall coming off the torn ACL. So I think this actually might be a solid landing spot for Dalvin.
I mean, absolutely. If anything, this is great for Dalvin Cook and it hurts Breece Hall. No pun intended, given he just came off a torn ACL. It's going to be an interesting situation to watch. We haven't seen a running back duo quite like this. I know probably the most popular running back duo that you'll see, especially as far as fantasy goes now, is Jones and Dillon out there in Green Bay. But I think these are two running backs who are undisputed number ones on any depth chart in the league. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they split the carries, especially considering Cook's now there for a year. And, Breece Hall's, as you mentioned, coming off that injury.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll be early on more Cook, even though he doesn't really know the playbook yet. I think he'll pick up on it quick. Running backs in the quick pick up on playbooks fairly quickly, especially veterans. So I would think early on Dalvin will get the lion's share of the work, but Breece, we know how talented he is. As the year goes on, he gets healthier. I think it'll be about a 50-50 split in the second half, maybe more like 60-40 in favor of Breece. So to me, if you draft Dalvin, it's more of one of those things. You'll have him early, he should do good, but once the second half rolls around, might want to start making other plans. Might want to make a trade, maybe try to trade him away, or you're not really getting much for him because your other league mates know that. Then, try and get some other young backs to get on your bench that are also trending up, kind of like the way Breece, I think, will be trending up in the second half. Try and scour the waiver wire, see if maybe like Chase Brown from the Bengals is eating into Joe Mixon's workload, or maybe Tajay Spears, the rookie from Tulane, will be eating into Derrick Henry's workload. You never know what might happen with these second half developments. So just keep an eye on that if you're going to go with a veteran like Dalvin Cook. But I definitely think Dalvin still has redraft value, especially those first few weeks. Because Breece Hall, that's a serious ACL. He's not going to be himself to start the season. There's just no way. And even if he is, they're going to be extra cautious because that's a team that's trying to make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, it's very rare we see a running back come off an ACL injury and immediately return to their prior form. So, but I definitely agree with what you said. And if you are able to get the handcuff, this is probably the best handcuff there is now in that backfield. If you could be lucky enough to get Cook and Hall, in my league, we actually drafted on Sunday. Just it's how scheduling works with all of us scattered around the country. And one of my league mates actually used his keeper on Breece Hall, and he was able to get Dalvin Cook in the middle round. So, that was an incredible pull. And if you're lucky enough to do so, props to you.
Yeah, that could be an interesting strategy as well. Try and just lock up the entire backfield. Like I know some people have been doing that with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Evan Walker is their 2 and Charbonnet is their 3 or 4. I'd probably feel more comfortable as my 4. But yeah, Cook and Breece, they're both good enough. I'd be okay with them as my 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's because we know that offense is going to be explosive. Aaron Rodgers, we know what he's going to do. Garrett Wilson there, the alpha receiver, just picked him up in a best ball slow draft that I got going on. I was hoping for Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I was like, you know what? Garrett Wilson's there. Give him to me instead since Amon-Ra was gone. But let's move on now to Zeke. Zeke Elliott signed with the Patriots, and let's be real, y'all. This is very, very irrelevant for fantasy outside of the fact that he's going to probably vulture some goal line carries from Ramondre Stevenson, but don't get it twisted, y'all. This is still Ramondre Stevenson's backfield. They gave Zeke only I think it's like a $3 million contract. They basically just threw him a bone to come over there and be some early down guy a little bit to help out with the goal line work. Basically what Damian Harris was doing last year. And let's be real, Ramondre Stevenson blew past Damian Harris once the second half came around. And I really don't see Zeke even being as good as Damian Harris. So to me, this is one of those things. If you want to draft Zeke as a late round flyer, okay, but he's probably just going to be waiver wire fodder most of the year. Don't draft this guy thinking he's going to be the Zeke of old or is going to take Ramondre Stevenson's job.
No, there's no chance he eats into many of his carries. Like you said, it'll be goal line and short yardage situations. And even then, if you talk about a guy who is assuming that Damian Harris role. It's easy to forget that Damian Harris only had 3 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, he wasn't very good.
He isn't gonna eat, and he's not gonna be Jamal Williams of last year. He's not gonna do that. Ramondre Stevenson is a very capable back. He's all around better than DeAndre. I've seen a lot of comparisons. The only reason I'm bringing this up, he's a more complete back than DeAndre Swift was, and he's not as injury prone. So, barring an injury, I mean, like you mentioned, Ezekiel Elliott is waiver wire fodder. I think it's the best way to put it.
Right, yeah, because the fact is the Patriots' offense not very explosive and probably not going to create many goal line opportunities. So, yeah, moving on. Not much to say there. Let's move on now to the Saints. Darrell Williams signing there to talk about it in the headlines, but this will be a very short-term fix. So, again, don't go spending any sort of high draft pick on this guy. But late double-digit rounds, I could see it because he'll be getting PPR work. Like, he's not going to be something special, but I could see just like as a bench stash.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a guy like Kamara and you want that very short-term cover, but I think as soon as Kamara comes back, Darrell Williams will be off the field completely, if not off the team completely.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying, like, for those that I would probably just take a chance on a rookie. I'm not advocating to draft this guy, but if it's one of those things, it depends on how your team's built. Let's just say you happen to get like some running backs that aren't so sure to start the season. Let's say you got like Breece Hall, Zach Charbonnet, Devon Achane, like a really young backfield. At that point, I'd probably take Darrell Williams late, take someone like, that's got like Samaje Perine kind of. Like I said, Perine I think might actually still have a role even when Javonte comes back. Where once Kamara comes back, Darrell Williams is value shot, but you got to keep an eye on these short-term fixes, though, because we all know fantasy football is a week-to-week game unless you're playing best ball. Like, I mean, I'm in a best ball draft right now, and that I have no interest in Darrell Williams. But if you're in the, weekly league where you got to set your lineup each week, it's important to keep note of these veterans like him that are going to be in for big roles early, even though it's just short-term. It's like if he's getting 15 to 20 points those first 3 weeks, you don't want to just leave that on the waiver wire.
Yeah, if you're someone who does these specialized strategies, the wide receiver heavy, no running back strategy, and you need a running back too for the first few weeks, or even a flex play. I don't see why you'd need a flex play in that situation, but
yeah, flex a receiver.
Yeah, I mean, if you're absolutely screwed at running back early in the first few weeks, go ahead and maybe take a flyer on Darrell Williams. Don't leave him on the waiver wire, as you said, but nothing more than that. I mean, don't let him waste a roster spot for more than 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, honestly, first 3. I'd say after the first 3, even if he's doing good, once Kamara's back, I'm cutting him because it's like he's not going to have any sort of stable role at that point. So anyway, some food for thought on that. But let's get into our stock report because these are guys that we know are going to get drafted, and so we're going to talk about them here. I'll kick it off here. Jahmyr Gibbs is someone that, because I'm a David Montgomery truther, so I wasn't really buying the Jahmyr Gibbs hype, but now I'm on board with both. I can see now that both are going to have a role, and Gibbs is he's such a prolific pass catcher out of the backfield that I'm thinking he's a value right now at the beginning of the 4th round. I'd go as far as to say I'd take him in the middle of the 3rd. I was hesitant, but he's an upgrade over DeAndre Swift in my book. And I say you're down on Swift, Gabe. I am too. I just don't see where he was getting it done. And he was a guy that people tried to hype up. But I think Gibbs will actually do what we thought Swift was going to do. So at his price point, I'll take the chance.
Yeah, especially if he can stay on the field, which is something Swift couldn't do.
Yeah, I mean, Gibbs, stayed on the field last year at Alabama, handled a big workload with Nick Saban, so he's shown he can do it in college, and I think he'll be able to do it in the pros. Alabama backs have a pretty good track record. Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Najee Harris. I mean, generally pretty successful there. So, yeah, I'm buying Jahmyr Gibbs, and I see you're buying Tony Pollard, man. I'm still a little nervous about him in the middle of the 2nd, but I can see why the hype train's taking off.
Yeah, one of the reasons I have his stock going up is the Ezekiel Elliott news. There was a lot of rumors in the offseason that, will Zeke be back? Will he not be back? And I could see how that could eat into Pollard's stock. But I think now that we have an assurance he's not coming back to the Cowboys, Tony Pollard is that guy. He's not going to have competition. I think that you can safely take him in the mid-second round now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we know he's going to be the true workhorse. I'm just still a little worried about the injury concern since he's never really played that role before, but they seem to trust him, and I think Dallas is going to have a nice season this year. I'm no Cowboy lover by any means, but I got to admit they've got a nice roster assembled. Now, I think it's because they've just they were able to get some pieces that kind of just fit the puzzle. They didn't try to make any drastic swings. They just kind of made smaller moves, and I think Jerry, he's letting Stephen Jones run the show more over there, and it's starting to reflect that this isn't the joke Cowboys of the 2010s. This new age Cowboys team looks pretty legit, and Tony Pollard should lead the way in the backfield. So as far as stock down, got Breece Hall, and a lot of it has to do with the Dalvin Cook signing. I know he's back in practicing and all that, but if they sign Dalvin Cook, that tells me they are not confident in Breece Hall being a workhorse. Simple as that. You don't sign a guy like Dalvin Cook if you think you've got a true workhorse in your backfield. And Breece Hall, I think by 24 will be a true workhorse. So for Dynasty, I'm still all in with Breece Hall. But for redraft leagues, I'm not touching him, at least not at this price point. If he falls at a late 4th, early 5th round, I'll consider him. 5th round, I'll for sure take him. But anything earlier than that, I'm out. I mean, Dalvin Cook's there now. Dalvin Cook was still a borderline RB1 last year, even with the decreased efficiency. He's a guy that commands a big workload. And so Breece Hall, it's going to take him probably 2 months to really get his footing under him. And I'm not trying to wait that long in redraft. I mean, redraft, you got to win now. I mean, it's all for this season. If you don't get it done for this season, too bad, so sad. So I'm out on Breece, man. I'm not trying to play the waiting game.
Yeah, especially at where they're projected to go. I'm not really touching either of those backs. Dalvin Cook's value is going to shoot up now, probably because of the certainty that he's now signed. But yeah, as you said, I'm just not going to wait and sit and play that game. You can't afford to do so. You can't afford to use a 3rd round pick on a guy that you're going to wait on. Now, if Breece Hall was available in the late to middle rounds, yeah, you can afford to do that, like with DeAndre Hopkins last year. But no, you can't play that waiting game.
For sure. And I see you got Swift on there. We kind of mentioned him earlier. But what makes you got him as a stock down? What about him do you see has been falling?
I mean, as the days go on, it's becoming increasingly difficult to see him having a predominant role in that offense. We talked about Dallas having a lot of weapons. Obviously, Philly has a lot of weapons on that side of the ball as well, with Jalen Hurts, the 2,000-yard receivers. And then just in that backfield, you've got 4 guys alone who could be splitting carries. And I'm just not trying to waste a 6th round pick on a guy that's competing for touches with 3 other people. So I think his stock should be down, especially considering the fact that we don't really have confirmed reports about him being the number 1. The Eagles essentially took a flyer with him. You could see it going either one of 2 extremes. He could be the starter, or he could even get cut. You just never know. The Eagles didn't give up anything of value to get him. So you just never know. And there's too much uncertainty around that backfield for me to be comfortable with taking him anywhere near the 6th round.
All solid points. Yeah. I mean, I think the best point you brought up there, yeah, they didn't give up anything of value. They basically just got him to be competition for Kenny Gainwell. And I would think he'll do better than Kenny Gainwell, but Kenny Gainwell's basically free in drafts. I think I'd rather just take a shot on that than have to spend an actual mid-round pick on DeAndre Swift. So before we move on from running backs, my dad has a question here. Who are the top 3 rookie running backs this year? The first 2 are obvious, Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. Both are really high picks. Bijan a 1st rounder, Gibbs I'd say mid to late 3rd rounder. And the number 3 rookie running back, though, is tough because there's no obvious one. I mean, some people go in Charbonnet. Some had Kendre Miller before the injury. The one I have, though, because of his situation is Devon A-Chain with the Dolphins. He's in a good spot for success. Had a good preseason debut, and I'm thinking that he's worth a mid-round pick in redraft. I'd much rather him at his current value than a guy like Swift.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to disagree just slightly. I like A-Chain a lot. I probably have him at number 4. I like Zach Charbonnet out in Seattle. I like his situation in Seattle. I think he's gonna get some decent time on the field.
Yeah, they're close. I got him. Let's see where I have my rankings. I just pulled them up. I got him RB 39 and 40. So there you go. They're right nipping
much closer than that.
Yep. So wide receivers up next. I'll let you start this one off, Gabe. Treylon Burks. Got him. Trey Burks is a stock up.
Yeah, a lot of people are down on him after struggling last year, but we got to look at the quarterback situation. I personally don't love Treylon Burks, so I had to put my bias aside here. But I think, he was a number 1 last year. He's going to be, and he had a horrible quarterback situation. I think we can all agree with that last year with Josh Dobbs and Malik Willis, and that was a mess. Now he's got Tannehill. He's got Hopkins taking the spotlight away from him. Okonkwo obviously is going to take away some targets, but I think Treylon Burks could eat as a number 2 receiver.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm a little higher on Okonkwo at his current price because he's a tight end. You get to put him in your tight end spot. D-Hop's presence, I think, definitely hurts Burks. And he's a guy, though, that was on track to have a really big role. And so Hopkins is up in age. If something would happen to Hopkins injury-wise, which is very possible, then at that point Burks goes back to being the go-to target there. And in that case, even though they're a run-first offense, they're able to support at least 1 receiver, maybe 2. Maybe Burks could still thrive with Hopkins, but I'm thinking that he'll need a Hopkins injury to really thrive. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I'm not touching him at his current price. If he falls like the 10th round, I'd consider it, but
yeah, and I think, I think in a lot of leagues now, he's falling because of DeAndre Hopkins there. So I think that's the reason I have him stock up, because I think he's fallen a little too far, a little more than what this ADP suggests. Mm-hmm. So I just think because a lot of people have last year in mind, he's one of those guys where he's not a great number 1, but he's a serviceable to great number 2 receiver in the NFL. Yeah. He's got that potential. So that's the reason I'm kind of up on him recently.
Yeah, I can see it. I got Calvin Ridley, and I know a lot of others are high on him, but it's justified. I mean, this guy is, when he's healthy, he is a stud. And Trevor Lawrence was going to, I know it's just preseason, you don't want to take too much from it, but he looks spry out there. He looked like his old self, and I just think I think the year off may have been a benefit for him, because, when you play 16, 17 games a year, it takes a toll on you physically. And when you get to have a year off, it's like, that's kind of nice, especially when you're into your later 20s like he is. Ridley is racking up some mileage there, having played 3 straight full seasons. In his 4th year, he got cut short because of the mental health stuff and then the gambling suspension. So he hadn't played in like a year and a half, but I think he's going to ball out now that he's with a really good quarterback there in T-Law and in a really good system for receivers. We saw what Christian Kirk did last year, and I don't mind Christian Kirk, but I mean, Ridley's going to be the alpha there if he's healthy. And so to me, in the 4th round, it's worth a shot. Anything higher, I'm maybe pumping the brakes a little bit, but 4th round, I'm all in, and maybe even 3rd round. What the hell? This guy is going the ball this year, assuming he can stay on the field.
Yeah, definitely. And, just going to directly related is my stock down with Zay Jones, because here's the thing. I think Christian Kirk is still going to eat. I think he did too well last year as an excellent receiver, kind of broke out for the Jags last year. I think he and Trevor Lawrence's relationship is too good for him to truly lose a big target share. So I think Zay Jones is going to be the odd man out here, because I think obviously Ridley's going to eat. I think Evan Ingram's still a decent option, although I'm not taking him as high as other people. Don't rate him that high. I think they're a little too high on him after a flash in the pan that was last year. It's still a serviceable tight end, though. And I just don't see Zay Jones being a top 25 receiver again. I don't think it's possible, and obviously his ADP shows that. But he's ending up on waiver wires in a lot of leagues to start after drafts. So maybe you take a late round flyer on him, maybe 17th, but I'm not taking him in the 15th. I think there's too much value to be had elsewhere, especially in younger guys.
Yeah, I agree. When you get to those late rounds, you might as well just take a shot on a rookie, older veteran like Zay Jones. Just isn't worth the trouble, especially now that Calvin Ridley's passed him up on the depth chart. So I've got Jalen Waddle as mine. He's still an early round pick, and rightfully so. He's very talented. But to me, the second round is too rich for my blood. I'm not touching Jalen Waddle in the second round. He's battled an undisclosed injury. That's something we'll have to keep a close eye on, because if that ends up a thing, then we'll have to really move him down. But assuming he's healthy for week one, he's just someone, though, that looking at his stats from last year, he was very dependent on the deep ball. His rookie year, he was much more receptions heavy. So going into year two, you're like, well, at least he's got a good PPR floor. And then he had a really good second year, but it was the opposite. It was because he was getting a lot of yards after the catch, stretching the field. And he'll probably play that role again because Tyreek Hill is more the receptions guy there now. And so Tyreek Hill's the one I prefer. I mean, he's going in the first round, and rightfully so. But Jalen Waddle, I don't see seeing the targets that he needs to be a second round pick. Third round, I'm okay, assuming that undisclosed injury doesn't end up worse than it currently is. So I just don't want to take a chance on someone that's so dependent on the deep ball like that.
And Spencer, I think before we get to the question,
go ahead, give it a take.
Because Waddle showed that ability to rely on receptions, and obviously he's, as you mentioned, he's not going to get as many with Hill there. I think because he's shown both abilities, I think he's still, I think his value is still accurate there at the end of the second round. That's where I'd take him. So I'm not either up or down on him. Obviously that could change with the injury and as we learn more, but just wanted to kind of chime in there on that.
Oh, yeah, it's all good. Yeah, we're not going to agree on everything. So a quick exercise for you before we do the moving on. Jalen Waddle or Chris Olave?
Olave.
Okay, yeah, their ADPs are very similar. Here's another one for you. Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith?
Waddle.
Okay, that's where I recently changed my rankings. I've been having Olave over him, but recently I swapped Devontae and Waddle. I had Waddle over Devontae, but I recently swapped him because I feel like Devontae offers a more stable floor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. It's once again going back to the Devon A-Chain, Zach Charbonnet thing. It's insanely close. You're going to be talking a few points difference probably, barring injury.
Facts. So yeah, the same question. Top 3 rookie receivers. I guess JSN number 1 for me, Jackson Smith and Jig, but he's just so talented. And even though he's behind Metcalf and Lockett, there should still be enough for him to do well. But it's really close, though, between him, Zay Flowers for the Ravens, and then Jordan Addison with the Vikings. I'd probably put Flowers at 2 because I think he's got a shot to be the number 1 there in Baltimore. Addison will be the clear number 2 to Jefferson, but I think he could end up playing just as big a role as Adam Thielen did last year, which was like flex worthy a lot of weeks.
Yeah, I think I'd flip that order almost exactly. I think I'd go Addison number 1 just because he is a number 2, even though TJ Hawkinson's there eating into some targets. Zay Flowers is number 2 because I like the potential as his number 1. I think, I agree with you. I think he will be the number 1 in time. And I think number 3 is JSN. I think from a talent standpoint, JSN's probably the best there, but I think it's going to take him a little while. And how I feel about Lockett, and obviously Metcalf's there as well. So I think it'll take him a little longer to get going than the other 2.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, just JSN, man, who is oozing with talent. And he's that Ohio State pipeline, with Olave and Garrett Wilson. If he's anything like them, then he's in line for a nice year.
Put it this way, there's not much to differentiate the 3 in terms of talent. I just think JSN's situation per se is the worst for PPR leagues.
I hear you.
Early on, at least.
Yeah, Zay Flowers, I think, might be the best situation because I think he's going to pass up Odell.
So do I.
Odell's just, I mean, he's just too old, too many knee injuries. But let's move on to QBs. We got some QBs to talk about here. These are mainly later QBs. I'll start off Brock Purdy, 14th round. But the good news with him, I got him as a stock up because he's been cleared to practice in full, and Trey Lance stunk up the joint in preseason. I mean, come on, Trey Lance. You had your chance to maybe show to the coaching staff that you were a threat. Now it's like he's probably not even going to beat out Sam Darnold for the backup job. So done with Trey Lance. Forget about that. Don't waste your time drafting him. If you're going to draft the 49ers QB, go with Purdy. He's their guy. He's in Shanahan's good graces, and they've got plenty of weapons over there, so could have some good weeks. And in my stock down, Kyler Murray. I am not touching Kyler, and it's not because of the sports brawl. I've looked more into that. It was actually like a pacemaker he had on or something. They probably could have shaped it a little different to where it didn't look like a freaking brawl because he got roasted all over social media for that thing. Did you see that, Gabe?
No, but I mean, as a soccer fan, I see almost every soccer player wears one of those, so I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's actually a really cool thing. If they're bringing it to the NFL, then it's intriguing, but it's something they wear in soccer, and it tracks like obviously their vitals, but then it also tracks how far they've run and all these different unique stats. So I didn't see this. If they're bringing it to the NFL, though, I'm all here for it, even though it does look like a sports bra.
Yeah, I was going to see if I could pull up a picture for the listeners here so y'all could see what I'm talking about. Because, yeah, it definitely, I mean, I can see why everyone was clowning him, but it's just like, I mean, if he's doing what he has to do, to get healthy, I don't blame him. But it's like, the reason I'm down on him, though, is because it's just, for one, the injury, it's like coming off the ACL from last year. That's just, that he's not going to be ready anytime soon because the injury occurred late in the second half of last year. So probably not going to be back till late October at the earliest, if I had to guess. And the offense sucks. I mean, their offense is freaking terrible. The Cardinals have nothing there. They have Hollywood Brown, but outside of him, they don't really have anything reliable. Their tight end room's pretty good, but I guess
Rondale Moore if he can stay healthy, but he hasn't to this point in his career.
Yeah, actually, now that I'm talking about it, kind of thinking out loud here, it's more so it's the OC. I don't know what to think of this new OC. At least with Cliff Kingsbury, you knew with him being the air raid guy that you could throw passes down, that he'd call a lot of pass plays down the field. With this new guy, I don't even know who his name is. I mean, who knows what the offense is going to look like. It might be good news for James Conner. It might end up a big run fest because I know their head coach is a defensive guy, Jonathan Gannon. He's probably going to want to establish it. And Kyler, there's rumors that Kyler might be on his way out after this season. And if they suck and get first overall pick, they'll draft Caleb Williams probably and tell Kyler to hit the road. And they'll just eat all the dead money because Caleb Williams' contract, he'll be on the rookie contract. So then they'll be able to absorb the cap hit from Kyler at that point, but we'll see. Maybe he'll prove me wrong and have a big second half, but the way things are trending, I don't want any part of him for fantasy. It's not worth the headache.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing deep leagues and you've got a starting quarterback who's got a late bye week, I could see maybe taking a flyer on Kyler, and if he doesn't look good by then, if he returns by then, I could see you wanting to take a flyer to use him for 1 week if you've got one of the elite quarterbacks. But other than that, I'm staying away. But I did have one little exercise for you, Spencer.
Yeah. What you got?
Relating to your stock up, stock down guys, what is a worse business decision as a football team? Giving Kyler Murray that extension or trading up to get Trey Lance?
Whew, man. I would say giving Kyle that extension because at least with the Trey Lance thing, it's like it's a rookie contract. They didn't have to pay him like the big bucks. Like we're freaking Kyler. It's like even if they do the thing, what I'm saying, and can get Caleb Williams, they're going to have to eat so much dead money to where they won't even be able to get him as many weapons as you normally can get. Like for a rookie contract, like Joe Burrow, they've been able to like build around him, spin on the offensive line and stuff like that. Where if Caleb Williams might be in trouble if he ends up in Arizona because Kyler, it's like having to eat all that money. They're not just gonna be able to wave a magic wand and make that go away. That's on the books. The Trey Lance thing, if he's a bust, which is looking like he is, well, they gave up some draft picks, which sucks. But, they're free and clear of the contract, won't give him an extension, obviously. And they've got enough talent there to contend. So, to me, Kyler's the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong answer. Looking back in hindsight, obviously we have that benefit, but just two awful pieces of business when you look back at it.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy how these teams just are willing to make these rash decisions. And the 49ers, I know what they were thinking. They were thinking that they were just a young quarterback away, and they were going to build around their rookie quarterback. But I don't think they expected their rookie quarterback to be a 7th-round Mr. Irrelevant, but here we are.
I don't think we've ever seen, now that I think about it, I don't think we've ever seen teams buy in so quickly and then just immediately lose all value as the Cardinals and the Rams have both done in the last few years. And obviously the Rams got a Super Bowl out of it, but I mean, they're in a horrible position, as I know you love to point out. And then obviously the Cardinals are terrible.
Yeah, speaking of horrible situations, the Rams with the freaking the Stafford contract. That's another thing that's really bad. But yeah, just before we move on to Gabe's guys, I just wanted to pull up the Kyler Murray thing for those that were wondering what we were talking about. And yeah, that's what he was wearing. Everyone was joking at him, calling it a man's ear, but it was actually the pacemaker. I believe it was the actual term for that, something to help with his rehab.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something I've seen before, so it doesn't come as a shock to me. And obviously the memes write themselves.
Yeah. And and then my dad's got another one about rookie QBs, which Gabe's gonna break down here. These are the top 3 rookie QBs: Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud. Gabe is up on Richardson, down on Young and Stroud. Explain, my friend.
Well, as far as the down stocks go, I think we saw in preseason, obviously don't put too much stock into preseason. But I think we saw just how bad the offensive situations are for both Stroud and Young. I mean, I cannot explain how bad the Panthers offense looked. And they had their starters out there, and they looked bad. So I think, obviously people love to take the flyers and redrafts on the rookies. I'm not coming anywhere near Young or Stroud, honestly. That's personally my opinion. I think both of them will experience growing pains as a result of the lack of talent around them. So that's why I'm down on both of them. You could have convinced me to take a flyer on them maybe earlier in the year. And obviously I don't think they'll be that bad going into the season, as bad as they were over the last week. But yeah, I'm just not touching either of them. And then obviously Anthony Richardson stocks up because he was named the week 1 starter earlier. And, there were a lot of questions about that. Would he start? I think, at least to me, as a fan of a team who's gone through enough of these rebuilds with rookie quarterbacks, I think he was always going to start. But other people had some questions. So I think now that he's the starter, and we'll get to see those legs on display from week 1, he's probably the most valuable rookie quarterback.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, Rich, because of that rushing floor. I mean, it's like he's gonna get the rushing, even if he sucks as a passer, which I've been having a debate with my buddy Justin from Fantasy Follow, who's in love with Rich because he's the most athletic quarterback of all time. How are you not all in? I'm like, for Dynasty, yeah, I'd love him in Dynasty, but for redraft, I'm not all in because he's gonna suck as a passer. But at least he gives you that stable rushing floor to where, I'd take him as a QB2. And then, Young and Stroud, it's just it's growing pains, and they don't offer that rushing floor because I think they'll be a little bit better as passers than Richardson. But as we all know, it's more about with rushing. It's like there's not as many mobile quarterbacks as there are pocket passers, and as a result, the guys that run, even if they're not that good of passers, tend to be fantasy relevant because those 50, 60 rushing yards are not that easy to find. Whereas they'll probably only throw for 150, 200 yards a game. That's like bottom of the barrel. So it's like, that's not going to move the needle for fantasy. So Young and Stroud, it's going to be a transition. Neither have very good weaponry. So I can see staying away from those guys and just play the waiver wire, unless you're in super flex. But if you're in single quarterback leagues, just don't draft those guys. Just play the waiver wire and see where they end up. The ADPs, for those of y'all wondering, Young's is the 13th, Stroud's the 15th. Stroud's basically undrafted. Young, QB2 in a lot of leagues, but I'd personally rather like a Brock Purdy or even Jordan Love. Jordan Love's stock to me went up from the week 1 of the preseason. He looked much more in command of his offense than Bryce Young did. And so moving on now to tight end positions, running a little short on time, so we'll have to rapid fire this one. I got Darren Waller as my stock up. I was down on him. I think we talked about tight ends last week, and I was down on him, but started doing more research, and he's a guy that is having a great camp and appears to be fully healthy. And it's something that I know he's had trouble staying healthy, but to me at his current draft price, I'm going to take the chance because in that offense, when he's healthy, he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver if he can stay healthy. And even if he doesn't play every game, even if he plays like 13 or 14 games, his average points per game will be enough more than the average tight end to be worth it there. And to me, Kyle Pitts simply isn't. He's still battling the MCL injury that he suffered last year, still in a knee brace, and he looks sluggish last year. And in that offense, that is a run-first offense. I just don't trust him there. And I know the Giants are too, but I think the Giants are going to try to be a little more balanced this year. Atlanta, I mean, they took Bijan Robinson. They basically doubled down on being a run-first offense. So Drake London, I think, will get his. Pitts will have his moments, but the 5th round to me is way too high for someone with that much uncertainty.
Definitely agree. As far as mine go, let me just read you some numbers real quick, Spencer. 11, 15, 10, 16, 10, 14, 6, 13, 15. Those are the points in a standard PPR league, full point PPR that Zach Ertz put up last year. Obviously, we mentioned the injury concern. We mentioned the poor offense and just the change around the offensive landscape there in Arizona. But I mean, you're looking at a guy whose ADP is in the 18th round right now. If you are someone who has the space on your roster or likes to carry a tight end too, a tight end too is probably if you keep 2 defenses or kickers, I don't know what to say to you. So then you're looking at tight end too is probably the least valuable position. So if Zach Ertz is there in the last round, if you can get production like that, potentially if he comes back healthy, it's absolutely worth a last 2 rounds flyer for me personally. Obviously there's a lot of ifs there, but once again, if you're going to gamble on a position in fantasy, let it be a tight end too.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Pat Freiermuth, 8th round is just a little too high for me, given the fact that he's probably the best of the inconsistent group, I guess, maybe Njoku at tight end. But I think his targets are going to be a little too few going into the year. I think the young receivers in Pittsburgh have obviously grown up a bit, as we saw at the end of last year, and I think they'll get more target share going into the year. I just don't see Freiermuth replicating his early season success from last year throughout a full campaign.
For sure. And as my dad brought up earlier, healthy disagreement makes for an interesting show. I'm going to have to not totally disagree with you, but I'll bring up some counterpoints. About Ertz is that Trey McBride's there, a young tight end. If McBride doesn't develop like we're thinking, then I think Ertz will have a role and be of value as basically a free agent. So it's like neither one of those guys are really worth drafting. So just let it play out. And, if Ertz ends up still the guy over there, then take a shot on him with the waiver wire. And then Freiermuth, I feel like he offers a somewhat stable floor. Doesn't have the upside though. So 8th round isn't an exciting pick. 9th or 10th round though, I'm on board.
I agree.
So for sure. Yeah. Pretty standard stuff there. Tight end position is you just kind of have to play the wire because Kyle Pitts is not the best tight end ever. That would be Mr. Travis Kelce, who was not drafted nearly as high as Kyle Pitts. It just goes to show that these GMs think they know and they don't always do.
They don't, especially in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's for sure. Maybe Bijan Robinson will break the trend of the Falcons looking like idiots. I kind of think he will. Bijan, I think he's a generational talent, but
he's as close to a surefire thing as you can get in a prospect.
That's what I'm saying. So I think with that, I think that's why I'm as far as the Saints, I think Atlanta's definitely the biggest threat. I'm not worried about Carolina like some folks.
Yeah.
But we'll have a rapid fire rant here for y'all. Just a quick PSA. Football's ramping up, and obviously we spent our whole show talking football, but for those that play fantasy baseball, which me and Gabe do, and I'm in a couple of leagues with the playoffs starting up in a few weeks, and I haven't forgotten about them, but just for those that I can see where if you're real into football that you can kind of forget about them. Just a PSA. Don't forget about those things. You put all this time into those fantasy baseball leagues, 4 or 5 months grinding. Don't just let all that slip away. Just check your lineups. Don't let it fall apart in August if you're a contender. If you're out of it, then yeah, whatever. Move on to football. But if you still got a chance to win some money, keep pushing, y'all. It's not that much extra work. I mean, if you've already put in that much work to building this thing up to being a contending team, finish the job, damn it. Because I see that so much with fantasy baseball where the leagues are going good. And then when football starts, everyone abandons it. Like, come on, man. Like, why'd y'all put all that time in if y'all just going to quit? Like, damn, man. But I feel like a lot of leagues have dedicated people. It's just a reminder, not getting on anyone specifically. I feel like most of us degens don't have any problems checking, but just a reminder, though, don't get too wrapped up with football. We got these baseball championships to finish off.
Yep, your fantasy baseball team does still exist.
Yeah, even though it's not as – I remember for a while there, fantasy baseball was really catching on. Same in fantasy basketball, but in fantasy football has just become the dominant alpha of fantasy sports. But
as it is in real sports in America, football is king.
Yep, and I can see why. I mean, it's marketed perfectly. I mean, it's just the once a week aspect of it. It's just the perfect storm for popularity. So.
Yep.
But that's gonna do it for this episode of Fantasy Roundup. For Spencer Guru, Gabe Henderson, thanks for tuning in. And just a reminder, Listener League going down in a few weeks with a prize from Caesars Sportsbook. If you want in, make sure to hit us up. We've got our Twitter handles there. So hit us up there or our emails, and let us know if you want a spot. But until then, we'll be back next week, 4 o'clock, same time, same channels. See y'all then.